Anyway, are you ready? Let's run through the Grand Slam real quick. Poor Arthur Ashe spinning in his grave. Is it my imagination? I haven't gone back and watched the program from last year. I know they didn't, and I'm not knocking again their crowd. They didn't sell out this year 20,000 people. They had over 10,000. It wasn't full, but still, it's a giant place.
It would have sold out the Garden with the modern, the way the seats are currently, I believe.
Right. But the point is, did it look like a bigger crowd last year because the way they shot it? This year, the stage and the set looked great, but that dominated every shot in the field of vision. You couldn't see the people. They had a stadium, and it looked like an indoor crowd of 5,000 people.
Well, they had 7,000, give or take, less people. So that, and a lot of that was in the
okay, but that means they had 13,000. I'm just telling you, and I'm not giving Kevin Dunn any credit for this. But the WWE, when they've got a medium-sized crowd, they shoot it like it's goddamn WrestleMania 3. There's the impression that there's more people there than there is. In this case, it was shot and appeared to me like there were less people there than there were. Last year, it seemed more impressive.
Because it was more impressive.
But I'm talking about the shots of the building. No,
but they couldn't shoot. I think they were limited because, again, it's a tennis stadium, and the way it goes up, you couldn't shoot high because as soon as you shot high, you would expose that there was no one there.
Okay, but there were shots that I saw of the lower bowl, and there was a lot of floor seats, and they just had static shots of like a group of people. They could have done pans. They could have had a jib. If they had the jib and panned the entire floor and did a circle, it would have been a 30-second uninterrupted shot of people. Different.
Now, they should do stuff like that. I'm not disagreeing with you, because when you have a crowd like that, and even if it's only 13,000 and change, you're in a stadium, it looks good. You got to be capturing lots of footage like that. I agree.
So, get the jib, Captain. Anyway, so the first match, damn. Chris Jericho enters, and the audience, especially in New York, does the sing-along. They know every word. Why be a heel? If you're going to encourage the people to sing your song, why be a heel? Or if you want to be a heel, why don't you take the song away from the people because the ego gets in the way? There's a difference between reinventing yourself and bouncing back and forth between being a heel and a babyface when it fits your outside the ring projects. But it was for the Ring of Honor title. Claudio Castagnoli, the brand new champion that just won that title from the little short fella that stormed out.
Jonathan Gresham, I believe was his name.
There you go. He's gone back to writing novels.
Oh, will you stop it?
And it was good. They had Ian Riccaboni on commentary. And I was thinking, okay, name, value, star power. We got Chris Jericho in the opening match. What a better way to establish the Ring of Honor title is something that stars want to go for. And he and Claudio, I'm sure, will have a good match. And I'm not even going to critique the fucking match. Claudio's great. We know that. This was okay for Jericho these days. There was one point that Jericho went down on the floor and tried to hide behind Kerry Silken and tried to sucker punch Claudio and missed Claudio with the punch. He was 6 inches short. Claudio didn't realize had to sell it kind of anyway, like, ooh, did I get hit? But I'm thinking back to Tyler Black and Davey Richards. I'm thinking back to Eddie Edwards and Roderick Strong. I'm thinking back to fucking I'm thinking back to all these state-of-the-art, modern-style Ring of Honor world title matches that I saw and that have been held over the last 10 years or so. And I'm pretty sure that the Ring of Honor fans of 2012 would not have dug this as a Ring of Honor world title match. It's not the same. What they've done is Tony bought a company because he was a mark for the fucking initials and the video library. And that's fine. Now you got a video library, but he's tried to keep the promotion alive on his television program that for another promotion. And all it's done is clutter everything up with multiple championships where nobody can keep track of everything. And this match did more to tell the fans that did exist of Ring of Honor over the last 10 years, well, nothing you liked about the promotion you liked is going to be involved in what we're doing. Because this is a standard WWF style match, and I don't want to ruin anything for anybody, but guess who the new Ring of Honor World Champion is? Fucking hell. So their poor Claudio gets signed. Claudio comes in, has all the goodwill from the fans. They love him. They're wanting to see him get a chance. He was shit on in the other place. Then they put the Ring of Honor World title on him. And the very next time we see him in any kind of fucking legitimate television program, maybe he's been on fucking YouTube defending the title, he gets beat by Chris Jericho, who, if Chris Jericho had put Claudio Castagnoli over here, it wouldn't have hurt him one iota. Chris Jericho would have still been the same person he always was, over just as much. It would have helped Claudio, and it would have helped establish the Ring of Honor title as being something somebody would want. But now, Claudio here's his dick's in his hand again, and the Ring of Honor fans obviously don't want to see Chris Jericho defend the Ring of Honor title, because that's the whole idea, is that you're getting the modern matches with Ring of Honor, and that ain't what you get with Chris Jericho. Just the modern falderall outside the ring. So this was pretty much the absolute worst thing you could do. Put the Ring of Honor title on a guy that no fans of Ring of Honor would want to see, have the matches for the world title, beat Claudio when he still had a hope, had a chance of getting over. And by the way, in the finish, so ladies and gentlemen, Claudio finally gets the giant swing and fucking hit Jericho with a clothesline and got a 2 count. And right then I said, boy, it would really mean something for Claudio if he wins this. And at that point, Jericho goes and gets the bat in front of the referee, Aubrey Ed. He swings the bat at Claudio. Claudio blocks it, takes it away from him. Did she disqualify anybody? Nay, she did not. She grabs the bat and puts it out of the ring. And while she's doing that, Claudio goes for a fucking power bomb. Jericho backdrops him. He lands on his feet and staggers forward and almost hits Aubrey in the corner. And she, in a very stagey way, turns around and covers up. And Jericho kicks him in the balls and hits the Judas 1, 2, 3. And then the fans cheer the hell out of the heel for fucking the babyface and sing his song. Hey, original Ring of Honor fans, the ones that didn't like me, how you liking Tony's Ring of Honor? A bad fuck finish with a fucking WWE style match and beating one of the favorite talents that's ever come through the Ring of Honor doors, all in the same 15 minutes. Your thoughts, Brian Last?
I want to ask you a question about this to play devil's advocate in a second, but there's something we've talked about for a little while now, you and I, because you and I have never really seen Claudio the same way, and this is exactly why. This is my problem right here. Whenever, even in WWE and now here, whenever it seems like he's getting an opportunity, getting a chance, whether it's with a belt or with a push, it's yanked away right away. And I know that's probably not what Tony's intention was here, but that's the way it feels. I was just starting to be able to invest in this guy, his new career, his new name here in AEW, gets this title, it's already gone. So now Chris Jericho could be a world champion. I wasn't crazy about the match, but the people there were crazy to pop for a title change. Jim, I want to ask you a question.
There had to, just by process of elimination and the odds, there had to be a title change, since wasn't every single match they presented for some kind of championship?
Just about. Because when I had the graphic with the two wrestlers on each side, there was like a belt behind them in every single one of them, I noticed.
Everybody gets one. Go ahead, ask me.
To play devil's advocate, if you're Tony Khan and you're trying to get a television deal for Ring of Honor, you're trying to revive this promotion, you're trying to not let it die and bring it back, you're trying to just keep it going until you can get something on the air, and you're trying, and he's admitted it. He's talked to executives at Warner Brothers Discovery. Does that make putting the title on Chris Jericho a smart move? If you're trying to get a television deal for this brand with Chris Jericho as the world champion, Chris Jericho who loves publicity, Chris Jericho who will do an interview with anyone, Chris Jericho who will just always be out there, Chris Jericho, a name that a network executive may know. Does that make putting the belt on him a good idea?
No, because Jericho is still 50 years old and ain't going to have a Ring of Honor match. The same things could be said for putting the Ring of Honor title on Bryan fucking Danielson. And then you would have an actual Ring of Honor wrestler who went on to achieve great heights in the WWE, and everybody's universally respected and everybody knows who he is. And he can work the style still to this day because he's smart and talented. And every existing Ring of Honor fan would accept that. And every AEW fan who maybe had not even ever seen Ring of Honor or gave a shit about it would go, oh, okay, Bryan Danielson, all right, this is going to go somewhere. That would solve the problem of a name that a TV executive would know that has been used even more prominently in the biggest promotion in the world than Chris Jericho more recently. So I understand want to put a name or want to put the belt on a name, not that name, because he don't fit.
You bring up the Ring of Honor fan. What is the Ring of Honor fan now? Because the Ring of Honor fan, when they first started up, obviously changed a little bit by the time you got there full time. And then that fan changed a little bit by the time the Young Bucks were running shit. And then that fan had to have changed a little bit after that because everything changed when all that talent left. Who is the modern Ring of Honor fan? And is it even the same fan that was there in 2002?
I don't know. Over the last few years, and there's not just a specific Ring of Honor fan that doesn't watch any other wrestling besides Ring of Honor. However, at least at one point, I know because I was privy to the numbers in the early 2000 teens, just adding up all the syndicated television that Ring of Honor had, you had between 500,000 and 1 million people watching the show on some station somewhere in this country at some time in the course of a week. And yes, most of them watched other wrestling programs, but the reason why they were watching Ring of Honor and the reason why, especially the New York and Toronto and Chicago crowds that came in decent numbers and paid for the time, decent ticket prices, they wanted to see the best independent guys. They wanted to see, at the time, either TNA or WWF had pretty much all of the major talent and name talent locked up. But here were these guys that were the best on the indies, the Samoa Joes, the Davey Richards, Eddie Edwards, Roderick Strong, Jay Lethal, Briscoes, on, Chris Hero, Claudio at the time. We can go on. And they were having great athletic, hard-hitting matches. They were doing all the big moves, but there was an element of professionalism to it that when we tried to insist on the guys not fucking hurt themselves whenever possible, and that's what that fan base wanted to see. And they can get that out of Danielson. They ain't going to get that out of Jericho. And if you have bought the company and you're putting it on your television and you want to try to make something out of it that's in any way different than what you're already doing, if it's not going to be different than AEW, then why is he fucking doing it? Just concentrate on AEW. But if you wanted to preserve the legacy of the promotion, get that 500,000 fans or whatever the fuck it is, or just have a different style of wrestling presented where you can have some of the guys that might not fit in AEW, maybe they would fit in Ring of Honor or vice versa. It's got to be some difference. So why are you going through all this if you're not going to follow through with that? It doesn't make sense. He's just collecting belts, collecting promotions, Nothing wrong with collecting video libraries, but putting all of these belts and all these new titles and new champions on their existing show when they got too many to begin with, and then just make Ring of Honor a promotion with the same people in it that are in AEW. What the fuck?
It's not the same people. It's some of the same people, and then the people who Tony still has under contract, but he doesn't really want in his locker room, like Colt Cabana and Brian Cage.
Well, there you go. So, cast-offs, wannabes, misfits, gypsies, tramps, and thieves, whatever. Speaking of cast-offs and misfits, the AEW Tag Team title was on the line. The Acclaimed against Swerve and Keith Lee. And there were people in the corners. Swerve and Keith Lee had a guy named Fabulous. And Acclaimed had not only Daddy Ass, but a guy named DJ Who. And apparently, DJ Who and Fabulous were sitting together with each other because they got a camera shot of them together, the opposing friends. I don't know. Okay. Everybody's going to want me to do the caster rap. I'm not going to do it, and here's why. I was trying, but I couldn't never over the crowd and on the audio hear his first line when I was trying to write it down. And I said, you know what? I will just come out. The best line was that Swerve and Keith Lee looked like a 20-ounce and a 2-liter of Pepsi. That's how the story goes. It's more like Swerve in a glory hole. Holy, I never thought we'd get glory hole on wrestling television, but we did.
It was an interesting episode. We got prick on TV, but shit was bleeped.
Shit was bleeped. This match obviously was the one that the people were waiting for. The Acclaimed, at least one of them is from New York. People were waiting to see the belts change hands. They should have changed hands at the pay-per-view 2 weeks ago, as we mentioned. But Acclaimed have really, the people have decided we like them. And I wanted this to be good for them. And unfortunately, and I'm not sure whose fault it was, but I don't think it was the Acclaims. But this could have been a lot better. And first of all, they gave them the corpse referee. Wasn't there used to be a rule for the New York State Athletic Commission after you're 55 years old, you couldn't get a license?
Oh, I don't know. There was some really old ass, bad, awful referees sent from the Athletic Commission that I think were older than 55. So
no, that's, you know what? I've got it in reverse. California, you couldn't get a license after you were 55. That's why Blassie went to New York. Well, anyway, whoever gives a license to Rick Knox ought to be shot. Here's the problem with this match. Keith Lee and Swerve are not only not a good tag team because they haven't been teaming up very long, but also they're not very experienced apparently at tag team wrestling entirely. They're a heel tag team with baby faces that are over like God in this big crowd. They should have been shining them like a brand new penny from the start. But at the start, they worked it like a generic match without those, built-in fucking pluses, having your baby faces over like God and having a big crowd. And Keith Lee starts overpowering everybody. At one point, the Acclaimed went to scissor each other because they got one over on Keith Lee, and Swerve, the heel, drop-kicked both of them from behind, made the babyfaces look like idiots, and that was a break spot. So the heel team should have been out there calling everything they could figure out where they could be bumped ass over tea kettle for these two guys for the first segment, and then get a heat spot to the break, but there was no tag team work in the whole first segment. Then they come back and they're getting heat on Caster. But then Caster makes his own full comeback. He didn't start a false comeback and then make a tag. He made his own comeback and then tagged Bowens. And Bowens kept it going. More comeback, but he never even went for a false finish one time before the heels then stopped him. The heels are greener than pepper trees, and the baby faces are apparently listening to what they have to say. So then Bowens foiled a double team move, but Keith Lee stopped him again and beeled him over the top rope to the ramp, which was a hell of a bump. and then choke slammed Max Caster, but then Keith Lee missed a moonsault, and everything came to a fucking halt. And then they set up, apparently, somebody was in the wrong spot, and finally they got it back. Swerve grabbed the boombox and was going to hit Caster, but Caster moved and Swerve hit Keith Lee. And of course, Knox, the shitty referee, was leaning out of the ring for some specious reason, so he couldn't see it. But since Swerve lost his grip on the boombox, when he hit Keith Lee with it, it bounced off and went over the referee's head and landed on the floor outside the ring in front of him. So he had to ignore a giant portable stereo being flung across his head and down in front of him. Then, here's where something happened, and I'm still trying to figure out what. It wasn't that bad a match to this point, because even though it could have been better with an experienced heel team knowing what they were doing to call some shit, they hadn't really fucked up royally yet, except for the shitty referee. But then Bowens came off the top and hit the blockbuster, and Caster was coming off the top to go, what does he call his elbow? The mic check?
Mic drop.
Mic drop. He was coming off the top of the other turnbuckle for the mic drop. And because of the camera shot was on Keith Lee laying there tight, you suddenly saw Caster jump off the top. You saw him come in from the top of the picture frame and land on both feet and apparently tweaked his knee. Now, you shouldn't land on both feet like that going for an elbow. The only time I've seen anybody do that going for an elbow off the top and land like that was Shawn Michaels against Vader at SummerSlam 96 when Leon forgot to roll out of the way. And that's what Michaels started kicking him in the head for and yelling and cussing him for. Point is, Caster didn't drop the elbow. He landed on both feet and hurt his knee, and it looked legitimate because for no reason, he then dropped down, sold it, and rolled out of the ring, and there was conversation going on, and Bowens covered Keith Lee for a 2 count, and then everything stopped. And so I'm thinking, did Keith Lee, was he supposed to move, and he didn't move, and Caster pulled up and landed and tweaked his knee? The whole thing was screwy. So at that point, then, everything stops. There's some conversation. You see people yelling. Then Caster and Bowens grab Keith Lee, but he shoves them both off and tags out. That's why I think they were telling him something. And then Swerve comes in, and somehow Caster then climbs to the top rope with the bad leg, but he's trying not to put weight on the leg. Now, if the leg's not hurt and he's selling it, then it makes absolutely no fucking sense whatsoever in the context of this match. So I think that somebody fucked up. Keith Lee didn't move. He landed on his fucking feet trying to pull up, hurt his knee. They started calling audibles. How do we get out of this? He climbs to the top with one leg. Swerve stops him. I wrote, what the fuck are they doing? Swerve tried to fireman's carry a one-legged man off the turnbuckle into Keith Lee hitting the ropes and giving him a pounce. But since the guy's got one leg, he just crumpled in a heap, and the crowd started booing, and then I was getting embarrassed for everybody. And then they powerbombed Caster and got a 2 count, and then Bowens pulled Caster to the floor, and I wrote, God, why don't they go home? And then Swerve, the heel, wipes both of the baby faces out on the floor with a flip dive over the top rope. And then Swerve and Billy Gunn faced off, and Billy Gunn, the babyface manager, gave the heel a famouser on the floor, rolled him in, and then Caster did the elbow off the top where he doesn't land on his fucking feet like that. 1, 2, 3. Big pop because the people wanted to see him win desperately. They dropped the confetti. The match at the pay-per-view stole the fucking show and was great, and the people were going out of their minds. And they had the magic moment. And they fucking fumbled it. And then they come back 2 weeks later to try to rectify that and make the magic again. And I don't know if the people in the building noticed it, but this match goddamn fell completely apart to the point where I was hurt for the guys involved and wanted to see, and it's not the Acclaimed fault. I don't know how or why Caster hurt his knee, but the match wasn't good then because Lee and Swerve are a rotten heel team that called no teamwork spots or any kind of shine for them. And the crowd wanted to love it, but it fell apart, and the Acclaimed were if anybody noticed, I mean, maybe everybody's just so happy they won the belts, but I felt bad that their big moment of triumph was rotten. And like I said, it mostly wasn't their fault. And then, before you say anything, we go back for an interview in the back with FTR, who get a 60-second fucking backstage promo. They still want a tag title match, but they got 10 words out, and the Gun Boys come in and make fun of them and are wise asses to them, and then walk off and leave FTR standing there, and FTR gets no response. So now, just so we're all keeping track, the time has passed. FTR will now not be the AEW World Tag Team Champions while they're the Ring of Honor and New Japan and AAA champions, because now it makes no sense. The new champions, the Acclaimed, are baby faces, and nobody wants to see them lose. The Buckaroos got their way. Now, if there's a rubber match, the third match between the Young Bucks and FTR, the Bucks will win, if they still indeed work for this company by that point, because now it won't be the big, important pay-per-view main event match where FTR wins the rubber match and gets all the tag team titles and fulfills what the people wanted to see 3 months ago, because now the people have realized they're never going to see what they wanted to see, so now they've latched onto the Acclaimed. Now they've got the belts, and it would make no sense whatsoever for FTR to wrestle the Acclaimed, because it would damage FTR's standing with their fans that they've gotten over with, to take the belts away from the new team that the fans have gotten over. And now the perfect excuse then for the Bucks to win the third match, if they ever book it, and if they come back to work here, is exactly that. Well, it's not for all 4 belts now, so who gives a shit? So they win in the end. And FTR's back there getting punked out by the Gun Boys. Your thoughts on this whole mess, Brian?
I don't think there'll be a third match. Let me start by saying that. I was enjoying it, although it was sloppy, and then it got really sloppy. When Max Caster came off the rope, either selling his knee or it seemed more likely tweaking his knee, I reacted kind of the same way the room did. I go, oh no. And it killed the match. And they tried to do stuff to get it back. One of the worst things about planning out spots in your head and then convincing other people to do it is when they don't work at all. And whatever that spot was where they were going to have Keith Lee run into Caster, I mean, even if it had worked, it wasn't going to work. I mean, it just wasn't going to work.
Well, no, I've set up and or been involved with a lot of tag team matches. And I can just tell you that anybody that knew what the fuck they were doing at that point in time, with whether the guy was hurt badly or just tweaked or whatever, with things going that way, they would have eliminated that, and they would have gotten straight to the fucking finish, to the meat of the matter, and got out there before they got any more on them. But they didn't. And that's what happened.
Well, one last comment, and you can tell me if I'm fair or unfair with this. The Acclaim went over. They should have gone over at the pay-per-view, but they went over here. They were prepared this time. They had all that pink confetti everywhere. Any problem with the Acclaim's big victory, but with the finish of it being Billy Gunn hitting his maneuver on the floor and then rolling the guy in? The fact that he played so prominent in the finish of the match, and it wasn't just the Acclaim going over on their own and then celebrating with their manager, even if he had done something earlier in the match?
Well, I would bring up more of that, except that I'm not sure that, was that an audible? Was that Billy going, Jesus Christ, are they ever going to fucking come to a conclusion here? Let me just do this. And then I don't know, because it was so fucked up. Nobody would have called that finish to happen the way that it happened, even if they'd have hit all the moves right. Something was wrong there. Something happened. I don't know what the fuck. So, yes, that wasn't... The thing is, the heels didn't cheat for Billy to be a tit-for-tat situation. The baby faces were down on the floor, both of them, with their backs turned to their opponent. The heel does a fancy flip over the top rope and, blisters all the fucking baby faces, and then Billy gets the opportunity to fucking hit the guy and roll him in. So, yeah, none of this was good. Remember at the pay-per-view match when they hit that fucking big double team, Acclaim did, for a 2 count, I said, my God, if they had hit it right there, that'd have been the biggest finish in history. That should have been the fucking finish. None of this shit should have been the finish. I don't know what they called and what they just had to do on the fly. But this certainly was not the way they intended to do it.
Any thoughts on Keith Lee and Swerve as a heel tag team?
Yeah, they're rotten. Swerve, attitude-wise, I mean, I like Swerve, his look, the attitude, the promo. Keith Lee is starting to just annoy me with that fucking weird look, his smile he gets on his face, and the lilting voice, and the shit-sniffing look, and the whole 9 yards. But they have no... Has Keith Lee ever been a heel before? Well, he was a babyface in NXT, wasn't he? I don't know. Maybe they just need experience. But no, this match was... It was rotten from the start to a discerning eye. And looking at it as somebody who, okay, I managed the greatest heel tag team in the business at one point, at that particular point in time. What would they have done for these green baby faces to give them the best match and get them over in front of the big crowd? Lee and Swerve did none of it because they don't know how. But we move on. Tony Schiavone was on the stage with Wheeler Useless, who got 2 words out, thank goodness, and MJF's music plays. And the big pop, and he comes out doing the fucking Fargo strut. The devil has arrived. The people are chanting MJF, MJF. And of course, he says, since he leans into it, since I'm the devil and you love me, you're my loyal devil worshippers. Hey, Tony, you fat old prick. He's got the picture. Last week, he was yelling and he was mad at everybody. MJF is a smartass. He's an obnoxious smartass, a conniving, cheating, lying, smarmy, all these things. He belittled old Wheeler. He called himself a god to the fans. They would drink my spit. And every man in this building would let me sleep with their wife, but I won't because I have standards. And he was on. He was in control of the whole thing. And old Useless tried as hard as he could to engage verbally. And apparently he was mentioning MJF's engagement. He just got engaged. It was on social media. And he tried to tie that into the promo. And he basically turned the fucking people against him. You did. because he's not good enough to do that. He's not a good enough public speaker or promo maker or whatever the fuck to do that. But then finally, thankfully, MJF took back over and saved the whole thing. And he knocked Danielson and knocked Moxley and knocked Regal. Said, hey, maybe he can teach you how to pop pills. And Yuta slaps him. And then MJF headbutts Yuta and shoves Tony down. Tony tried to take a bump. My God. I know Tony's a year or 2 older than me, but Jesus, I could still go down. I just wouldn't be able to get back up fast. But Tony couldn't go down. He had to stop and bend over and put his hand down so he could get down to one knee. Anyway, while that happened, then Yuta got back on MJF, and here comes the 7-foot Greg Allman, W. Morrissey, and pulls Yuta off, and then MJF nailed Yuta with the diamond ring and laid him out. But this should have been in a baseball stadium instead of a tennis stadium because MJF hit one out of the park. That was a home run. That was, and it's New York. They're going to like him anyway, and he went ahead and went with it. He's a smart ass to everybody. And the point is, whether you like him or you hate him, nobody's ambivalent. And every time he goes out there, whether it's verbally or in the ring sparingly. You don't see him wrestle much, but you get gold out of it in some fashion. It's worth watching. So whether they're going to like him or hate him, they can't take their eyes off of him. And that's Nature Boy Buddy Rogers level type of stuff there, where it doesn't matter whether they like you or they hate you. They just got to see you. What'd you think?
You know, if you want to get booed, just have him go out there with W. Morrissey every week. That'll do the trick. Yuta was awkward as hell on the mic, and obviously I didn't know where they were going at first, and then MJF came out to the big, massive hometown pop.
Yeah.
He's one of the few captivating people on that show. He always delivers on the mic. I don't know what Yuta was trying to say to him that wouldn't make him seem like just a dick, but it made you sympathetic.
It made him seem like a dick. Yeah,
it made you sympathetic for MJF and his poor fiance. I mean, it was great. Beat up Shivani. I loved it.
Yeah, but they got to be careful with that, because that's a money angle if you haven't done it. Now they've done it. Attack an announcer.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Attacking the announcer. They only did it, once to Gordon Soley in Georgia, right?
He wasn't even attacked. He was snatched.
Yeah.
And Roddy Piper switched babyface to come to his rescue. And Lance Russell, the only time I can ever think of Lance being physically touched was that time with the Dream Machine, when he came out and he was supposed to come and...
That's amazing.
He was supposed to come and snatch, Lance by the lapel and yell at him, but when he was coming so fast, and the TV desk was on a raised platform and it was right behind Lance, so when Lance got shoved slightly backwards, his feet tripped on that platform and he went down, and my God, you could almost hear the sound of guns cocking in the studio. Nobody had ever physically manhandled Lance, and Jarrett got hot. And everybody got hot in the back, and Dream's like, he tripped. I didn't mean it. Anyway.
That is one of my favorite things ever, because it comes right after they play Alley-Oop.
Yes.
Which is just this, alley-oop, and it's just Dream Machine dancing and kicking.
The Hollywood Argyles. He had turned heel, and there was a video of Lawler and a video of Dream for their big match. But the video of Lawler was him beating everybody, and the video of Dream was him hitting the ropes and tripping or getting foiled or taking bumps or whatever. Alley-oop. There's the man in the funny papers. We all know. Alley-oop. The Hollywood Argyles.
That's right, written by Kim Fowley. But they come back to the studio, and Lance is just kind of laughing, and Dream Machine comes running in there, and he throws him down. But while they all come out there to get Dream Machine, even Jimmy Hart's like trying to get him off Lance, he grabs the mic. And I've heard wrestlers say, "I'm going to kill you," and you kind of don't believe him. You believe him. He's like, "Lala, I'm going to kill you!" You totally believe he's going to
do this to me. You made me look like a fool, boy. Anyway, so after Tony had been shoved down by MJF and everybody was concerned about him, they pitched to a VTR from earlier today with Tony interviewing Jane Cargill and the baddies. And they actually had to say, well, earlier today when he was all right, they wrote the fucking format ahead of time. You would think somebody noticed. Anyway, that's where they bleeped Jane saying, "cut the shit." And why is she still saying that? If they've already been warned about language and there's no use in it, it means nothing to say the word shit to the announcer who hasn't got any shit to cut. And apparently Jane's got two girls there with her. Well, then Diamante came in and says she's got her girl Trina with her, and Trina is the baddest bitch. Who are all these fucking people? Who is Trina? Has she been on this program before? Has she been mentioned? She looked like a goddamn middle-aged hairstylist. And so Jane and her baddies are having a match, or Jane is having a match with Diamante on Rampage, I guess, with her bad bitch Trina. And Trina said, "Hey, you want some of me?" Who the fuck is Trina? Are we supposed to know who Trina is?
You got me with who the fuck are these people?
Who are all these people?
Trina is a rapper.
She's a rapper too. What the fuck? They had 6 rappers in this one program. Does anybody not know a goddamn rock and roll star? Can we get anybody with bluegrass? Anything?
Bluegrass.
Bluegrass. Bring Bill Monroe in and the Bluegrass Boys.
Maybe you can get Steve Martin.
There you go. At least people know who the fuck he is. Line Steve Martin up next to fucking Trina. Who the fuck is Trina? There's Steve Martin. Who's that standing there next to Steve Martin?
How would Jade Cargill and her baddies deal with Diamante with Steve Martin and his banjo in her corner?
I tell you, hey, Steve Martin's he'll kick your ass too.
He's a wild and crazy guy.
All right. Well, from that interview with Tony Schiavone conducting it with all these people we don't know who the fuck they are, they go back to the desk, and Tony's back at the desk. And there's, "Are you okay, Tony?" He's like, "I'm okay." And the Atlantic title was on the line, Pockets against Pac. 15 minutes of national TV time for Pockets versus Pac. Then we move on to the interim women's championship. Now, this is not the real women's championship. It's just the interim women's championship. 4-way, Britt Baker versus Athena versus Toni Storm versus Serena Deeb. And I watched the first 2 minutes of this, and here's what I got out of it. It was awkward, contrived. It was a routine done by numbers at 100 miles an hour with no change of pace or momentum and no logic. And I wrote, somebody's going to get hurt. And then I skipped ahead for a while, and then I tried to find a finish, and I noticed that Britt Baker was bleeding. So I backed up a bit. And the prophecy came true. Athena, who I've mentioned, besides, I don't get the whole deal. She's awful low slung. She's got a low center of gravity. She lands on people hard. She looks stiff. And I don't get the whole fucking presentation. But she apparently, well, not apparently, I saw her do it. She fireman's carried Britt Baker. So she's got Britt up on her shoulders in a fireman's carry. And then Serena runs and tries to cross-body her, and she catches Serena like in a slam position, except because what they were going here, Serena put her head to the left instead of the right like she'd be slammed, but she caught her anyway. You can envision this. She's got Serena like for a sack of shit slam. What do they call it? I call it the sack of shit because that's what Hall called it when he used to do it as Razor.
The Razor's Edge.
No, not the Razor. That's
yeah, that's right.
The fall away slam.
The fall away slam.
So she got Britt on her shoulders and Serena in her arms, and she's going to do a fall away slam and throw both of them backwards. In case you're wondering why you don't see that often, it's because it don't fucking work. Because again, this girl, I'm sure she said, I'm strong enough to pick y'all both up. And here's how I expect gravity to work, and y'all just take the bump, and it don't work that way. When she had Britt Baker on her shoulders, to drop somebody backwards from a fireman's carry like that, the safest thing to do is hook their left arm so when you fall backwards, they go with you flat instead of sliding off your back. But she couldn't hook Britt Baker's left arm because she was too busy having Serena in a slam position. So Britt Baker was holding on to her with her right arm, but there's no way to keep that grip when they're going backwards. So and some producer, if they bothered to share this ill-conceived plan with them, should have gone, no, that won't work, and here's why. But what happened was basically when she starts to go backwards, old Athena, Britt Baker's got she can stay on the shoulders when Athena is straight up, but Athena has let go of her, and she's falling backwards, and Britt Baker is upside down and has slipped off Athena's back, and Athena just took a flat back bump straight on fucking Britt Baker's face and broke her fucking nose. So she got another broken nose.
Ruby Soho's out with a broken nose.
Britt Baker's already had one, hadn't she?
Yeah, she had surgery for it, I believe.
Yeah. Well, hope she kept the doctor's card. So anyway, there's no way to do that the way they wanted to do it. Gravity doesn't work that way, but they tried it. And then for the finish, Toni Storm beat Baker. And then Baker got heat on Storm and wiped some of her blood on her. At least she leans into these things. Jamie Hayter runs down like she's going to make a save and joins Britt Baker in beating up Toni Storm. And they beat up the babyfaces forever. And then finally music played. And as soon as the word Saraya came up on the screen, the place went ballistic because I don't even know if they would have cheered if that had happened in a WWE building, because none of the WWE fans would have known probably what Paige's real name was. Well, maybe the most devoted. But these fans, they're the smart ones. They knew it was Paige, and boy, the place comes apart, and the heels bail out of the ring, and the fans go crazy, and Paige walks into the ring and walks around the ring and smiles at the people, and that was it. So she's here, but has she been cleared to wrestle? If she hasn't been cleared to wrestle, then what's she going to do here? Because she had history in the WWE. They wanted her to be an ambassador. The movie that came out, they wanted her to promote that. There was things outside the ring that she could do there. What can she do outside the ring here if she's not cleared to wrestle? And if she has been cleared to wrestle, then why did the WWE let her get away? She's not with Alberto Del Maniac anymore. She's not, he's not shoving the Colombian marching powder up her fucking schnoz anymore. She's not having public meltdowns. So if she was cleared to wrestle and could wrestle, how did the WWE let her get away? If she's not been cleared to wrestle, and we have never heard that was the case in the past, 3 or 4 years that she's been out, then what's she going to do here? Your thoughts?
I'll bet Tony didn't even ask her to take a physical before signing her, based on the way Tony does things.
What kind of fucking moron would you have to? That would be like, so, okay, Christopher Reeve, we'd like to sign you to wrestle for us. The most famous publicized injury of the past 5 years, one of them would have to be Paige's. And that she was not only out after surgery, but then came back to wrestle and just took a double-footed kick to the back and was down and unable to move and has been disqualified from wrestling ever since. You would have to be a complete lunatic to sign a wrestler under those circumstances without having them check to see if they can wrestle. So what's going on here? And boy, I'll tell you another thing. If Paige paid close attention to that match, she's got to be thinking, holy fuck, this is worse than a shoot. I don't want to get involved with these people. I'll go back up to the other place and be safely paralyzed instead of this shit looks like it hurts.
Well,
anyway,
the place went nuts for her, like you said.
Yes.
Now, this was an audience that was looking for surprises. Tony Khan had said there would be surprises on the show, so people were expecting it. And she did have a lot of goodwill with wrestling fans, because when WWE first started treating women's wrestling seriously, she was one of the stars in NXT before they even brought her up to the main roster. So, to the longtime fans of women's wrestling, it means something to them that she's there. Now, the question of what she could do, I can't imagine she could wrestle. She was a commissioner of sorts, or what, GM, I think, for Raw for one of their shows, or SmackDown. I don't know if it's that. Now, we have heard that Tony trademarked all elite women?
All elite women. And he needs some more of them then, doesn't he? Because he's got a lot of women, but most of them aren't elite. And here's the thing, if she's had this injury history, these able-bodied girls are fucking hospitalizing themselves on a regular basis.
I think the bigger issue is that the women's division is a mess. The booking of it is a mess. The management of it is a mess. Too many people getting hurt. Too many people being allowed to go in the ring and do things that, I hate to steal from Dusty, but things that don't know how to do. An idea that just doesn't work. The matches fall apart. Hayter's good, and Serena's good. There's a few Britt's got a great personality, but if she's in there with the wrong person, she gets hurt. If she's in there with the right person, she has a good match. The whole division is a mess. I mean, I almost hope there really is a dedicated show for Tony to have just the women's division and try to trim away some of the fat, try to help some of the people that need to get better, and try to do this right. Because just throwing these matches in the middle of the show, they kill the audience. It's every show. They kill the audience. It's every single Dynamite. At what point do you recognize that and go, you know what? The way we're doing this is not working. Even if we're going to get a big pop. Go bring out Bull Nakano. You get a big pop. Bring in anyone, you'll get a big pop. But it has to be bigger than that. You have to have a purpose to your division. And right now, there's none.
Well, and here's the thing also, All Elite Women, Ring of Honor, AEW. AEW's got 2 TV shows. Nobody watches one of them anymore because it's an afterthought. Ring of Honor is a promotion that exists in Tony's mind and in some segments of his television program. Now they want to do a whole program based on one of the worst women's divisions in modern history. Good luck with all of that. Anyway, it's time for the main event because we have been waiting for literally days now to see who the new AEW champion is going to be this week. And ladies and gentlemen, that came down to the final of the Tournament of Champions, Moxley the plumber against Danielson the wrestler. And we knew who we were betting on, and I've got to be honest. I got to hand it to Bryan Danielson. Jon Moxley stayed in the ring for the entire match except one spot on the ramp and right back in, and nobody bled. Is this the first time ever? Is this the first Moxley match you can ever remember seeing where he didn't fight on the floor at all, much less within minutes? And is it the first one we can remember in how long where he didn't bleed?
Well, maybe he heard Triple H's comments and he's planning his future.
I have a feeling that future is probably going to be here or home, one or the other. I don't know if he's going to go back in the other direction. But anyway, again, this was a stiff match. It was a modern style match. I could have done with a hold every once in a while, some wrestling. One tackle, drop down, hip toss, kickoff, arm drag, body slam, drop kick. Anybody do that shit anymore? But no, they beat the shit out of each other. Chops and kicks, chops and kicks. And Danielson looks better doing it than Moxley does, to be honest. But this is the modern match. It was good. It was a fucking 5-star extravaganza from what Moxley usually does. It was pretty good for Danielson. He's always good. He worked a little subtle heel. I did get a kick out of him doing the old leg grapevine and headstand thing where they'd slap each other in the face while they were standing on their heads. I haven't seen that in 25 years. That's Mexican in origin, right? That's a lucha spot.
Either that or World of Sport.
I'm trying to think who the first people I saw do it. I think it was maybe a Hector Guerrero thing, but nevertheless, they did a million kicks and stomps, and they went back and forth, and Danielson would go for his label lock. Moxley would try to do his shit. And finally, they went right down to the nub, and again, I'm not taking any piss out of this match. It definitely was great for Moxley and good for Bryan. And finally, Moxley hit the double arm thing that he does where sometimes it's a suplex and sometimes it's a DDT on the ramp. Rolled Danielson in, got a 2 count, got a rear choke on him. Danielson kicked off the buckle. Moxley held on to the choke, and my DVR froze because they either ran over or they were just desperately low on time. But we know that Moxley ended up emerging victorious. And was it moments after that, or did they go a while?
It was after that. He won with the choke.
Okay, so that was it. And they just get right down to the nub. That used to drive Vince out of his mind. Because he wants, if there's a big finish and a big main event match, he wants time for that beauty shot. And to have the announcers reinforce it and time to breathe. He hates to just go right off. But that was that. The Grand Slam, as they say. Brian, what were your thoughts on that big main event extravaganza?
it just wasn't for me. I haven't enjoyed a Danielson match in quite some time. I just haven't enjoyed any of it. I think a lot of it's just that chopping shit nonstop.
Yeah.
And the matches don't seem as creative as they used to. His matches were always creative, and I just feel like they're not as creative. Moxley works typically one match, and I don't like that match. He worked more Danielson stuff here than anything else, but I'm just not a fan of Moxley. He's maybe my least favorite wrestler there, although I understand his importance to the company and everything.
Yeah, and I give Brian a little more slack because, number one, you can't get much more out of Moxley, and number two, it's not his fault, again, when he was that wise-ass technical heel as a single. It was to the moon. It was fucking great. And now, like you said, for the past however long, it's been the Blackpool Combat Club and the group and the elbows and the blah, and they've made him
boring to me.
Yeah,
they've made him boring to me. And it wasn't like that not too long ago. I think overall, I just have a problem right now with AEW's TV. I mean, I've critiqued them forever, so everyone's going to go like, oh, you've always had a problem. But lately, I'm really down on it. I mean, I love the stuff with MJF. He delivers in his segments. I've enjoyed watching the rise of the Acclaim. We still don't know what the fuck's going on with FTR. Why have they been penalized and for what? Because why aren't they on TV? Why does their momentum keep getting cut off where either Dax is in a singles match or they come out, they get a big pop, and then they do nothing with him, or they bury him in a 6-man, but they're not on this show. The women's matches are killing these shows every single fucking week.
They're killing the women.
You didn't watch Pac and Orange Cassidy. I did.
Of course not.
And it was exactly what you would have expected. If you're an Orange Cassidy fan, it was exactly what you would have expected. He did all the moves he always does. He did his little kick spot. Pac had some amazing spots where he would take a bump and look like he was broken in half. But it was against Orange Cassidy.
At the hands of this fucking clown.
And guess what? The fans aren't reacting to him as much as they used to. He's as big a face of AEW as anyone. When you really think about it, he's been all over that TV more than probably even the executive vice presidents.
Orange Cassidy is a face of AEW television if they took a chimpanzee and shaved its ass and made it walk backwards.
Jericho's stuff has been incredibly lame. The stuff with him and Daniel Garcia has just been childish. It's made Daniel Garcia look from a young guy that could maybe get into a fight to a young guy who mentally is a child.
He's on the same level as Briggs and Stratton over on NXT that can't get laid because the guy's scared to talk to women.
They brought Claudio in. They had an original plan for him. It didn't work out, so then they put him in the Blackpool Combat Club. They start rebuilding him after years of being misused on WWE TV, so now he drops his belt right away. They have a trios title they introduced that no one was clamoring for. They already have...
Well, there one trio was clamoring for it.
One trio and one owner was clamoring for it who wanted more belts. The whole company's a mess right now. The booking is the worst it's ever been. There's no direction anywhere, seemingly. Except for the MJF segment seemed to have some sort of direction. The Stokely Hathaway promo last week was a disaster. Notice he was nowhere near this show this week.
Oh, God, I didn't even think about poor old Stokely.
But it's not a good show. And yeah, they got the gate. But the crowd was down substantially in New York. And, I look at some of the other famous examples of competitive wrestling products in the territory days or in Montreal, whatever you want to say. When all of a sudden less people start showing up a year later, you got to worry. They can fix things, they just have to, but I don't know what they're going to do right now. It's really I think AEW is a hard slog for me right now.
Well, they got the gate, and I'm about to give y'all the gate. Because my teeth are floating and I got a wee-wee.